Good evening. James Earl Carter III, 39th President of the United States, died today at his home in Georgia. Jimmy Carter, as he preferred to be called, and as the nation knew him, was 100 years old. He had spent his final year in hospice care. Carter served just one term in the White House, but lived longer than any other American president. A peanut farmer, Carter came out of a nowhere called Plains in the post-Watergate era, when voters were looking for a fresh face. Well, his came with a broad smile and plain talk with a Southern accent. Earlier this year, CBS News was there as the former president watched a military flyover in honor of his milestone birthday from his backyard in Plains, Georgia. Norah O'Donnell begins our coverage tonight of Jimmy Carter, from peanuts to the presidency.
I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Jimmy Carter entered the White House in 1977.
When I get to Washington, coming in as an outsider.
After campaigning as an establishment alternative. Born in Plains, Georgia in 1924, James Earl Carter Jr. was the son of a businessman, farmer, and registered nurse. He studied nuclear science at the U.S. Naval Academy, and while there, fell in love with Rosalind Smith, also from Plains. They married in 1946 and raised 4 children. Jimmy and Rosalind were partners in the family business, which moved from peanuts to politics. Mr. Carter served 2 terms in the Georgia State Senate, and in 1970, he was elected governor.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
He was hardly a household name, but he won the Democratic presidential nomination and challenged incumbent Republican Gerald Ford.
I'm going to vote for you.
Thank you very much. I'll depend on that.
With the nation reeling from Vietnam and Watergate, Mr. Carter's simple message struck a chord.
I would not tell a lie. I would not mislead the American people.
In 1976, America's bicentennial year, he beat Mr. Ford to become the nation's 39th president.
Tradition-shattering walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
But the next 4 years were rocky. As oil prices and inflation soared, his popularity sank. Yet President Carter did achieve many of his goals. He created the Departments of Energy and Education, established formal diplomatic ties with China, and returned control of the Panama Canal to Panama. Perhaps his greatest achievement was an historic peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, known as the Camp David Accords.
That deep and ancient antagonism can be settled without bloodshed.
At the same time, he became the first U.S. president to confront the threat of militant Islam. On November 4, 1979, Iranian militants stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 American hostages. A U.S. military attempt to free the hostages in April of 1980 ended in disaster. 8 American servicemen were killed. The very next November, with Americans still held hostage overseas and inflation soaring at home, Jimmy Carter lost his re-election bid in a landslide to Ronald Reagan. Mr. Carter spent his final days in the White House negotiating the release of the hostages.
I, Ronald Reagan.
Iran would not let them go until a few minutes after he left office. Jimmy Carter went on to have great success in his post-presidency. He established the Carter Center in Atlanta, working for peace around the world, and here at home, building houses for the needy through Habitat for Humanity.
I have this freedom to do things that I like to do and that an official of the U.S. government or the United Nations cannot do.
He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 and remained one of the most active former presidents in history. In 2015, Mr. Carter announced he had cancer that had spread to his liver and his brain. Faith was a constant guiding force in the president's life, and during this time, he continued to teach his weekly Sunday school lesson.
All right, I see you're wide awake.
Later that same year, he announced he was cancer-free and talked about it with us in 2018.
I was prepared to go, but things turned out for the better.
But that's an unusual thing, to prepare to say goodbye and then be granted a great deal more time.
That's true. Well, I've been very fortunate in many ways.
In October, surrounded by family and friends, Mr. Carter had his 100th birthday party in the backyard of his home in Plains, Georgia. Absent from celebration was his beloved wife, Rosalind, who passed away at the age of 96 almost a year earlier. The pair were the longest married first couple in American history. Mr. Carter reflected on their life together in the CBS Mornings series, Note to Self.
One of your greatest sources of happiness will be your wife, Rosalind, and the growing family that will be coming. Stay close to all of them. Bring them together whenever possible, and provide them the same help and support that your own parents gave to you.
And President Joe Biden commenting on the death today, saying America and the world lost an extraordinary leader, statesman, and humanitarian. President-elect Donald Trump saying we all owe him a debt of gratitude.